Most builders are afraid to build on a slope. There are issues with calculations, water drainage, and difficulties with constructing the foundation. Any small mistake can lead to tens of thousands of dollars in losses. I am at one of the most complex and largest projects, Sky Residence. It is located in a picturesque area of Austin near Lake Travis. In this video, I will share the top 5 mistakes that any builder can make when building on a slope. Mistake number 1 is incorrectly calculated elevations. The reason for this mistake is using an outdated survey when creating the design, or not ordering a survey before starting foundation construction. Usually, a survey company comes and marks the elevations. They set elevation points in the envelope. This way, you clearly understand at what height your first floor, second floor, and so on are located. If you don't do this, the mistake will cost you tens of thousands of dollars. You won't pass inspection. Your house could end up at completely different elevations, and redoing it will cost you thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. If on a flat lot, a mistake of a few feet in the elevation of the first floor likely won't cost you anything, on a slope it will end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars. Why? Because the wall can increase from 5 feet to 10 if you make a mistake with the zero mark of the first floor, which is set by the survey company. The second mistake is the absence of a geological report. Builders often try to save money and don't order a geological report. They often do this deliberately because they already know the type of soil present on the lot. For example, here we have limestone. This is a very dense soil that has formed over thousands, tens of thousands of years, and it is essentially a solid rock. But if your soil is soft, you need to order a geological report. Otherwise, your foundation may shift in the future. It could crack, one corner or another could settle, or the whole thing could move in some direction. Accordingly, the geological report will help your structural engineer create the right design and save you money. Often, if you don't order a geological report, the structural engineer will play it safe and design a reinforced foundation to avoid taking on responsibility. Therefore, it is advisable for you to order a geological report. $3,000 to $4,000 can save you tens of thousands of dollars on your foundation. Quick life hack. If you want to avoid getting a geotechnical report, you can look at who is building in the area around you and ask that builder or the engineer who designed a project for another house in the area for their report, make an arrangement with them, and it will cost you less. Or you can even hire that engineer to calculate your foundation for you. That way, you'll save several $1,000s on the geotechnical report. Problem number 3 is drainage issues. Behind me are drainage pipes, the so-called French drains. These pipes are laid under retaining walls or in areas where the lowest part of your foundation is located so that they can absorb water and direct it away. In addition to these pipes, you can also install external drainage channels. Now, a common mistake made by builders is that they don't lay these pipes near retaining walls or near the higher parts of the foundation. They also skip waterproofing and don't cover these pipes with gravel, failing to create what's called a barrier. Because if you don't lay gravel, the pipe will get clogged with silt and won't let water through. If you don't divert the water, this will eventually lead to the destruction of the foundation and possibly even its displacement. Accordingly, on all slopes, since water flows down in large volumes, you need to ensure high-quality waterproofing. A civil engineer can help you calculate all of this. It's better to consult with them, and they will do all the drainage calculations needed for building on a slope. When you build on a slope like this, water turns into a mud flow, and you absolutely need to divert it. For this, we create several levels of drainage. The upper drainage is where the water is collected as a stream and diverted to the side. And then there is the lower level of drainage. And sometimes we add an extra level of drainage around the footing area. It all depends on the height of the walls. If the retaining wall is more than 9 meters or 6 meters, we need to create several levels of drainage. But all of this will be calculated by the civil engineer. Mistake number 4 is multi-stage pouring. For houses on a flat lot, the foundation is usually poured all at once. In the morning, the crew arrives, the forms are ready, the rebar is set, you pour the concrete, they finish it off and the foundation is done. On a slope, this is impossible to do. Even if you want to pour it all at once, you'll most likely run into problems and losses, because the concrete needs to be compacted, tamped down, and vibrated. How can you vibrate it if your wall is more than 10 feet high? It's impossible to vibrate it. Accordingly, you need to pour in several stages. For example, there will be a garage for the guest house here. At this stage, we are preparing the footings in order to pour the first phase. Forms will be set up, the framework will be built, and this phase will be poured first without the wall. But at the spot where the wall will go up, a special joint will be created. A special liner needs to be placed in this joint, which creates a waterproof barrier, because we have a seam here. On the back side, there will definitely be a drainage pipe, and when water seeps through heave and through the drainage pipe into this joint, this barrier will hold back the water and prevent it from entering the house. But it is impossible to pour a foundation of this type on a slope in a single go, especially if you have a stepped foundation. In principle, it's just not possible. You'll need to break it up into 2 or 3 pours. The inspections will also be split into 2 or 3 stages. In other words, you won't be able to set up the entire formwork at once and pass the inspection in a single attempt. The inspector will come and note in his report, for example, that he has approved the lower part of the garage. Next time, he will come and approve the wall, the retaining wall, and then the upper part of the garage. A mistake would be trying to pour a stepped foundation with a retaining wall all at once. Based on my experience of building more than 10 houses on slopes, I am certain that this will cost you extra money. You'll see voids, non-vibrated cement, and this will come back to haunt you in the future. Water may seep into the house. It's better to divide this into stages. What is concrete vibration? When concrete is poured into a wall like this one, for example, it needs to be vibrated from the lower level so that it fills all the pores properly and the concrete passes everywhere between the rebar. If you don't do this, after removing the formwork, you'll see voids and sometimes even exposed rebar. This is a mistake, and in the future, it will cost you through foundation damage and additional expenses for its repair or reconstruction. Mistake number 5 is underestimating the retaining wall. People often think, a retaining wall, what's so hard about building it? A mason will come and just build it out of stones. In reality, moreover, in Texas, you can build a retaining wall up to 4 feet high without structural drawings and without a structural engineer. And people often make the mistake of building it out of small stones as they see fit. Then it collapses during heavy water flows. On the slope, I strongly recommend ordering a structural design from a structural engineer for your retaining wall, even if it's only 4 feet high. Of course, if it's higher, you absolutely must order one. Otherwise you won't pass inspection. There are several types of retaining walls, and we have a video about retaining walls and what materials you can use for them in your projects. In this case, we use the shotcrete technology, where one side of the formwork is built. We use this form and made it as a design because this part of the wall would be visible. For this wall, the formwork was built on this side, and from the other side we sprayed the shotcrete. Naturally, there are 2 layers of rebar because the wall is over 5 feet high. We have a huge, powerful footing that keeps this wall upright. Just imagine, this entire mass of earth will be pressing against this wall. If you build it out of just brick, as you might think, most likely it will fail or collapse during a heavy rain. Today, with global warming, you see that every day we have some kind of tornado or storm in Texas. Water is the main destroyer of all retaining walls. That's why it's 100% about the blueprint, 100% about drainage, and 100% about quality construction. Otherwise, in the future, you'll end up paying tens of thousands of dollars for its reconstruction. Another problem also related to retaining walls is that when you buy a plot on a slope, it usually costs less. But people underestimate that the cost of building retaining walls and complex stepped foundations will later amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars. For example, in this case, we built 2 walls to support one level of the septic field and a second level of the septic field, and these 2 walls cost us over $30,000. Mistake number 6 is an incorrect calculation of the driveway slope. Look at this bobcat. You see, it's standing on a certain slope. Imagine how a car would have to climb up this slope. The rule is, the most comfortable driveway has an angle between 5 and 10 degrees. Of course, if your lot is flat, you might have 2 or 3 degrees. That's the ideal scenario. But if you're building on a slope, most likely your driveway will have an angle. So a driveway is considered uncomfortable if the angle is between 10 and 15 degrees. In our case, in our project, we have 2 driveways. and all the calculations were based on the road. Our 0 point was the road, because the car had to be able to enter. We calculated everything so that our driveway has a 12-degree angle up to the first floor and 12 degrees up to the second floor. That's exactly why we had to lower the 0 point of the first floor as much as possible. That's also why we're now excavating and hauling away dozens of truckloads of soil from the upper floor in order to reach our ground level. Each truckload costs between $500 and $700 to remove. Imagine if you need to haul away 100 truckloads, that's $50,000. You'll pay just to remove the soil and reach your zero level. But in this project, we couldn't design it any other way, because the plot has a complex landscape and an unusual shape. It's triangular. We needed to leave space for the septic system. That's why we decided to keep a 12% grade, but at the same time build our house on several levels. Imagine from the 0 point to the road where the car enters to the second floor, we have 39 feet. That's not to the roof, that's to the second floor. If you measure from the 0 point to the roof, it's almost 50 feet. So this calculation always starts from the 0 point where the car drives onto the driveway. Today we heard about how many problems you can encounter when building on a slope. So why build on a slope at all? Well, of course, the first reason is the stunning views. When you build on a slope, you always get an amazing view. Next is the opportunity to create unique architecture with several levels. And each level can have its own special landscape, its own unique situation. For example, it could be a separate casita located entirely on one level. There could be a pool on another level, or a yoga terrace situated even higher up, offering the most spectacular view. A hillside location is also about privacy. When you build on a slope, chances are you won't have many neighbors, because not everyone wants to build on a hillside. And you can buy a truly unique private lot where there won't be a single neighbor around. In our case, we have only one neighbor on the left side. There's no one above, we can't see anyone below, and to the right, there's just forest. And of course, the value of this project, the value that in the future you'll be able to sell for more. Because what are just challenges today will become value tomorrow. Friends, if you have any questions about building on a slope, write them in the comments and join our builders community. Leave your comments and subscribe. See you in the next videos.